Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Very glad you're with us for the Thursday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. We've got good, bad, and crazy for you, and all of them are pretty intense. There's speculation now that Pete Hegseth could potentially be leaving the Pentagon to run for elected office. Zohran Mamdani trying to backtrack real fast about his defund the police comments in the wake of the mass shooting in Midtown Manhattan this week. I don't think anybody's really buying it, though. Nonetheless, he's doing pretty well in the polls, unfortunately. But also, we might not have Kamala to kick around anymore because after her failed attempt to win the presidency last year, she has announced that she is not going to run for governor of California next year. So that's where we start. And Jim, of course, last year, Biden gets forced out by his own party after the disastrous debate. Kamala Harris is pretty much coronated thanks to Biden's endorsement. Everybody's trying to pretend that she's perfect for the job. In the end, she loses, of course, loses all the swing states. And then for the most part, she goes quiet. Made a couple of comments around the time of the wildfires, but hasn't said a lot. She will be on Colbert soon, though, because she's got a book to push. And of course, he's very reluctant to have politicians on. But yesterday, she announced that she will not be a candidate for governor of California in 2026. I don't think this comes as a huge surprise. There had been some grumbling in the party that they weren't that excited about her running. She had been looking pretty good in the polls, I think basically due to name recognition, of course. Jim, you devote much of the Morning Jolt to this today, and you link to a California-based reporter named Alex Michelson, who says a source familiar with Kamala Harris's thinking says she was tempted to run for California governor, but ultimately didn't want to do the job. She's been in elective office for a decade and wants to take time to experience life as a private citizen and see how she can be most helpful. She's writing a book, setting up a nonprofit, and will travel the country to campaign for Democrats. She genuinely has not decided whether to run for president in 2028, but knew her heart wasn't into running for governor of 2026. Jim, unless you're really in difficult financial straits, I'm not sure why you're tempted to try to get a job that you don't want. But nonetheless, we won't have Kamala Harris word salad on the campaign trail for the next year and a half, which is a little bit sad. But ultimately, we know from her executive experience in Washington, she'd be a terrible governor. And so the people of California have at least been spared that.
You know, Greg, I think the best way to think of her, you know, in the end, she just didn't want to do the work of the job, much like being board czar. She, you know, it's just like she had the assignment, she had the title, but really had no. Look, jokes aside, I genuinely want to say good for you, Kamala Harris. Obviously, there were people who seemed to think that this was part of a redemption tour, that this was going to be something important. And I think if you're not interested in being governor, you should not run for governor. And I had been kind of beating the drum on this for a couple of months. As you mentioned, her public appearances were not exactly frequent. And when she did, she generally talked about national issues. Now, to me, if you really want to be the next governor, you figure you'd be talking a lot about state issues. It's not exactly been a quiet year in California. And, you know, her social media feed was mostly national issues. She offered a 3-minute video to the California Democratic Party's state convention. She just didn't act like she was that interested in it. So this announcement is not surprising news. The idea that, oh, well, if she's not running for governor, she's definitely running for president. I would not bet a lot of money on that. I think she can at least look at this and realize that she would not have an easy path. When she ran in the 2020 cycle, she literally didn't make it to the year 2020, dropping out in late 2019. You know, and she had she was handed the nomination in the summer of last year and did not succeed. So I think she would recognize that it would be a challenging path. There are a lot of ways to help your country without running for office. And I hope Kamala Harris can find ways to do that. And I hope this catches on amongst Andrew Cuomo and Anthony Weiner and Beto O'Rourke and Stacey, all these candidates who've run a couple of times, been rejected. And, you know, like there seems to be more of this addictive need to run for office rather than any clamoring amongst the public for that. So honest to goodness, good for you, Kamala Harris.
Yeah, I think Michelson's, one of his paragraphs here tells the story. She's writing a book, money there, apparently, I would think. Setting up a nonprofit, depending on how that's structured, that's a good way to get rich. And will travel the country to campaign for Democrats. I'm guessing not in the swing states, but since she wasn't exactly all that popular herself in those places, but I guess we'll see. It's kind of like Biden. Remember Biden in 2022? And for the most part, in any competitive race, they're like, you know what? You got a lot on your plate, Mr. President. It's okay. It's okay. You don't need to come here for me.
Yeah. One, by the way, Emhoff makes really good money as a Hollywood lawyer, so owns several. So it's not like she needs the money. And as for her as a campaign surrogate, or look, you bring her in for the state Democratic Party dinner in most states, she'll get donors to show up. They'll line up to have their picture taken with her, and she'll give her. So she'll do that. I would not have her in September and October campaigning in Nebraska, or maybe probably not North Carolina or a bunch of these other really key swing states, but she'll be, a reliable, helpful voice on what they used to call the rubber chicken circuit.
That, of course, leaves the question now, well, who is going to be the next governor of California? And obviously there's a lot of time to sort that out, but Politico with the story on that former Congresswoman Katie Porter, her and Sanity are not exactly the best of friends. She lost a Senate primary to Adam Schiff last year, so she's not in Congress right now, but she is running for governor. And her camp was quick yesterday to re-up polling from the spring. So it's been a while, but it suggests she has the support of 36% of likely primary voters. The survey, which was conducted by GBAO Strategies, also found that Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis and former Los Angeles Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa were tied as the second most popular Democrats, although they trail Porter by double digits. And you know what that means, Jim, is that a certain very prominent candidate is basically an afterthought already in this primary, and it's a guy that Joe Biden had in his cabinet.
Javier
Becerra. But as I went back to get that clip of Biden mispronouncing Becerra's name, listen to the longer sentence here about how Biden introduced him.
For Secretary of Health and Education Service, I nominated Javier Baccaria.
Secretary of Health and Education. Health and Education. Health, Education, and Welfare hasn't been a department since the Department of Education was created 45 years ago. So the people who are saying that Joe Biden had it all together when he first took office.
He was good in the first few years. No, he wasn't.
Right.
No, he wasn't.
I'm pretty sure that's not how his staff wrote it.
Get larger font on the teleprompter, please.
All right. Well, if you're Joe Biden's age or even a considerably bit younger, maybe it's time to take a look at your skin and make it as healthy and as glowing as you possibly can. And that's where OneSkin, our brand new sponsor, can help you out a lot. And, a lot of times we're not overly concerned with aesthetics, but we do want to keep our skin healthy as we get older. And that's why there are things that can really, really help, including OneSkin.
OneSkin is the first and only skin longevity company to target cellular senescence. Try saying that 10 times fast. Cellular senescence is a key hallmark of aging, and they fight it with their proprietary OS01 peptide. OS01 is not a droid in Star Wars. It is a peptide that you can only get through this company. But don't take our word for it. They've got more than 4,000 five-star reviews for their full line of face, body, sun, and travel-sized products.
Yeah, Mrs. Columbus is enjoying it. She started it several days ago. As I've mentioned, she says she really likes the fact that it's light. It's not a heavy cream and absorbs very, very quickly into the skin. So OneSkin keeps your skin looking and acting younger for longer. Get started today with 15% off using the code 3ML at oneskin.co. That's 15% off oneskin.co with the code 3ML. After your purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support your favorite podcast, The 3 Martini Lunch, and tell them that we sent you. All right, Jim, on to our bad martini now. And this is perhaps a triple bad martini here. All of the issues related to Zohran Mamdani. Of course, he is the Democratic nominee for mayor of New York City, handily defeating Andrew Cuomo and everybody else back in June. He was back in the headlines briefly this week after that horrific mass shooting on Park Avenue in Midtown Manhattan. The guy allegedly looking for NFL offices, thinking he's suffering from CTE, but killing an NYPD cop who's already got 2 small kids and another one on the way. Just a horrible story, as well as other people, of course, who were killed in that shooting. Another one seriously wounded. Well, he held a press conference yesterday, and as you might expect, the question came up, hey, you had all those tweets a few years ago about defunding the police. Now you're going on and on about how much you love first responders. So what's the deal? Do you actually mean what you said back then, or have you thought about this, and do you regret what you said back then?
My statements in 2020 were ones made amidst a frustration that many New Yorkers held at the murder of George Floyd and the inability to deliver on what Eric Adams, of all people, described as the right for all of us to be able to enjoy safety and justice, that we need not choose between the two.
So getting rid of the cops would have that balance between safety and justice. So that he's obviously feeling the heat a little bit on that particular one. But unfortunately, Jim, a new poll from New York City shows that he is well ahead in this mayoral race, even with a crowded field. 50% support now in this Zenith Research and Public Progress Solutions poll from July 16th to the 24th. Andrew Cuomo now at 22%, Curtis Sliwa 13%, Eric Adams just 7%, and one other guy at 1%. In a four-way race without Cuomo, Mamdani's support increases to 55%. In a four-way race without Adams, Mamdani's backing rose to 51%. And basically, there's no head-to-head matchup that's even within single digit at this point. So despite all of the efforts to expose exactly what a Marxist this guy is, and now you've got Politico pointing out that they think there's something called Mamdani derangement syndrome because people are a little alarmed that a communist might be leading the largest city in the country. It still doesn't seem like the New York City residents are all that worried.
Greg, this one, there are aspects of this one that are a hemlock martini. Right. Among them, because there's a part of me I was ready to say as you're going through those numbers, there have been a bunch of surveys that had incumbent, formerly Democratic Mayor Eric Adams in a distant fourth place. And I was about to say, this talk that Sliwa should drop out, Adams should drop out. Well, he's not dropping out, but his support is disappearing. 7%? It's one of the, Adams should get out so that 7% can go to one of the other guys and it doesn't really matter. It's not even much point in calling for Adams to withdraw at this point. Second, on the talk about Mamdani growing and reflecting, all of the comments that he is running from right now were made in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
This is not, keep in mind, he's 33. All right. The reason nobody's saying this guy should run for president is because he's not old enough to run for president. He would, I assume, by the next time, by the next presidential election. I cannot say that there was a time in my naive youth that I thought Adam Gase was going to be a good coach. There are just limits to how far your philosophies can grow and evolve in that time. And this whole thing of look, when I was saying abolish the police, just think of the time. It was 2020. We were all crazy then. No, that doesn't get you off the hook. But so I'm just going to shift aside all of this depressing news and just going to observe about Politico playbook. So they have two editions, a morning edition and the evening edition. This was the evening edition yesterday, where they talked about the alleged widespread breakout of Mamdani derangement syndrome. Now, people have heard Trump derangement syndrome. I guess before that we had Obama derangement syndrome. I guess for a while there was an attempt to catch on this idea of Biden derangement syndrome. Not all criticism of an elected official is a derangement syndrome. Right. And I think that you probably should reserve terms for derangement syndrome for that friend of yours who's constantly posting memes on Facebook. And every time you talk to him, nice weather we're having today. Is it? Or is it just the earth baking because of Trump and his pollution? I think derangement syndrome should really be reserved for this. Now, they come in the Politico newsletter, they come up with two examples. One, Greg, is a conservative social media influencer. And as we all know, those people are never deliberately incendiary to get more clicks because they're trying to monetize their social media. They're really known for their well-reasoned, even-handed, calm, and easygoing takes. That's what they're known for. The other example they point to is Republican Tennessee Congressman Andy Ogles, who did call for Mamdani to be deported. And that's pretty incendiary. If you want to call it derangement syndrome, fine. But keep in mind, this is the guy who's already called for amending the Constitution to allow Donald Trump to run for a third term. Wanted the FBI and the Secret Service to investigate James Comey as an assassination threat over that 8647 social media post. He has introduced the, quote, Make Greenland Great Again Act, And he sends out Christmas cards featuring his family holding rifles in front of the Christmas tree. So when you say, can you believe Andy Ogle said something crazy? Yes, I can believe that very easily. This is who the guy is. This is not exactly shocking. So I don't think you can point to him and say, oh my goodness, can you believe that Andy Ogles is saying something incendiary about Zohran Mamdani? It must be that there's some Mamdani derangement syndrome spreading over the country. Right? So I try to walk through for this, for any slow learners out there. New York City, because people might be saying, Jim, Greg, you guys have a national politics podcast. Why are you talking about the New York City mayoral race so much? Well, what happens in New York City has far-reaching effects all across the country. It is easy to say, if New York City were to break off and form its own country, it would be the 9th largest economy in the world. New York City has a larger economy than Brazil. New York City has a larger economy than Canada. I can see, listeners saying, it's not that surprising. And yes, New York City has a larger economy than Russia. But everything from media, advertising, banks, accountancy, biotechnology, fashion, international trade, because the Port of New York is huge. Tourism, really, just a ton of that, right? So if things slow down and get bad in New York City, there's a ripple effect that kind of goes out from that area across the country. So whether you're left, right, or center, you should want New York City to be thriving as much as possible. And if you're electing a communist man-child, you're going to end up with a whole bunch of problems in there. And, so it's, like you pointed out some of the abolish the police. He also called for abolishing private property. That's not Bernie Sanders' lovable Vermont crunchy Ben and Jerry's socialist. That's full-on communist, right? We need to nationalize the means of production style, right? And here's people say, if he's elected, he's not going to be able to do all these things. Okay, yeah, no, I get that. He's still going to be a very bad leader, and he's going to try to push policies in the direction that's the wrong direction as much as possible for a 4-year span. And will the governor be able to prevent some of this? Yeah. Does city council going to go along with it? Not necessarily, but it's just, New York City, has it recovered some of the worst days of the pandemic? Yes. As noted in this podcast a little bit, the crime numbers are actually getting better so far this year. I post that, and everyone's like, you're saying it's solved. No, nobody's saying it's solved. They're just saying that the statistics are going in the right direction month by month up till June. It's the last day of July. We'll see what the numbers are for July. But hey, that's pretty good. It's not doing Eric Adams any good, as obviously. But it's I don't want New York City to make a terrible mistake. And if pointing that out and saying that means that I have derangement syndrome, well, I guess I have derangement syndrome. It's called caring about the city syndrome, too.
No, that's exactly right. And he's clearly yanking the party to the left. And if he wins, which it appears from these polls that he's likely to do, the party's going to follow in that direction even more. I mean, the drift of this party to the left has been pretty intense over the last several cycles as it is. And now a guy who literally espouses open communist principles, he had a few people in the beginning kind of, I don't know about this after he won the primary. But now you've got, like we talked about yesterday, Pete Buttigieg is like, he is who he is, welcome to the big tent. And everybody else, when he was on Capitol Hill for the most part, trying to get a picture with the guy. So he's kind of a celebrity, and if he wins, he's going to be a bigger and bigger deal, and the party's just going to drift more in that direction. So it does matter that he espouses those things. And in terms of the media coming up with this Mamdani derangement syndrome, with just a couple of examples, reminds me of the time that Obama was pardoning the turkeys, and one anonymous, that nobody really knew in town, staffer of a pretty obscure congressman commented on the apparel of the Obama girls when they were teenagers. And it was a story for weeks.
Yes.
Weeks. So they'll find any little nugget to try and create a narrative from.
Yeah. And, where people say, well, if this polls Democrats to the left, it'll make Republicans more likely to win. Okay. But that's still, they're not going to win every election. And so at some point you end up with a Democrat who is full on socialist communist rather than merely, left liberal. Which is bad for the country. Secondly, if Democrats end up, if he wins the mayoral race, then more Democrats, maybe that's what we need to win. And you end up with, instead of a country that's got kind of a socialist communist fringe, that starts to become the mainstream of the party. And that is, again, very bad for the country, because someday Republicans are going to lose another election. That's just, I know everybody wants to believe that they're going to win forever, but that is not the case. And as for the media, I rarely do you see what struck me as such a transparent effort to create a narrative that, Mamdani is just another Democrat, but look at this derangement syndrome calling him a communist. They're calling him a communist because he's quoting Karl Marx. That seems kind of fair. I don't,
Yeah. The only silver lining here is that he was not born in the United States, that he will not be able
about that aspect.
to run for president, unless, of course, a federal judge just says you have to let him run.
Boy, aren't you glad we didn't change the rules for Arnold a couple years ago?
Yes. There was that push, believe it or not. But AOC's going to be old enough in 28. We'll see what happens there. Crazy all the way in New York City. And folks, you still got time to get sane, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen, at least not right now. If you have any friends in New York City, give them a call, even during business hours, and tell them, get a clue about this guy, Zohran Mamdani. But if you're running a business in today's fast-moving world, your team needs to stay connected to your customers without missed messages, communication silos, or slow phone systems. A flexible and efficient business phone system isn't just nice to have, it's essential for you to succeed. And that's why you need OpenPhone.
Greg, these are serious concerns for every major business in New York City while they still exist. With AI-powered call transcripts and summaries, you'll be able to automate your follow-ups, ensuring you'll never miss a customer interaction again. So whether you're a one-person operation drowning in calls and texts, or you have a large team that needs better collaboration tools, OpenPhone is a no-brainer. See why more than 50,000 businesses trust OpenPhone to manage their businesses' calls and texts.
OpenPhone is now offering 3 Martini Lunch listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/3ml. That's openphone.com/3ml. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. All right, Jim, on to our crazy martini now. And I have a feeling this isn't going anywhere, but it is strange that we haven't had a clear denial yet, I guess. NBC News reporting yesterday, and it's your addendum today in the Morning Jolt, that Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth is considering running for office in Tennessee and doing so next year, which means he would have to start the campaign pretty soon, which means he would have to stop being Defense Secretary fairly soon if he wanted to do that. But as you point out in the addendum, the only problem is that under state law, Hegseth hasn't lived in the state long enough to run for governor. Most of the other statewide offices aren't elected by the general public. And other than that, there might be one House seat that could potentially be available for him to run for. So I just find it pretty odd that it's possible that he's already looking for another job after just a few months being the top guy at the Pentagon. A clear no would be good in terms of a response on this. But ultimately, I suspect he's not really going anywhere.
Well, for what it's worth, I mean, Sean Parnell, the Pentagon's chief state spokesman, did give a statement to NBC News saying Hegseth's focus remains solely on serving under President Trump, unquote. However, in my experience, a story like this is awfully specific, and it seems kind of weird. Like in my experience, stories like this are rarely made up out of whole cloth. Now, does this mean Hegseth has put a lot of thought into this? My guess is no. This may have been idle chit chat or something. But by the way, if it is true, it is a little troublesome that, 6 or 7 months into the job, Hegseth is, wondering about what his next step is going to be. It certainly has not been a quiet 6 months on the job. Everything from the strikes against the Houthis, strike on Iran nuclear facilities, the signal chat getting leaked. There's been a lot of turnover and churn in Hegseth's staff, which is, maybe he feels some friction or some heat from that. But let me walk you through all the possible offices in Tennessee, because this can't have been a serious focus because there simply isn't any. There are very few offices you could run for. You mentioned governor. Under Tennessee law, to hold the office of Tennessee governor, a person must be at least 30 years of age. Check. Citizen of the United States. Check. And to have been a citizen of Tennessee for 7 years before the election. Well, Hegseth and his family moved to Tennessee in 2022, so he would not be eligible to hold that office. And you're like, oh, well, how about lieutenant governor? Well, Tennessee doesn't directly elect a lieutenant governor. Speaker of the Tennessee Senate serves as that job. The state Supreme Court appoints the state attorney general. So it's not like that's an elected position. State Secretary of State, state treasurer, comptroller of the Treasury, all of them get elected by the General Assembly for a 4-year term. That assumes Hegseth would even want any of those jobs. If you name a state commissioner job, there's a very good chance it's appointed by the governor. So all the state government jobs he's either ineligible for or that's not directly elected. So you can't imagine he would do that. There's a Senate race next year. Tennessee has a Republican senator named Bill Haggerty running, who's pretty darn popular in the state. He's running for re-election. There's no area, like for a primary challenge, Stephen Miller described the other one, not the funny one, said that Senator Haggerty is as MAGA can get. So there's not like there's a room for a primary challenge from some Trump loyalist or something like that. So then you get to the House of Representatives. Now, it turns out that there is an open seat race where John Rose is going to run for governor next year. This is Tennessee's 6th district. And guess what? This is actually where Hegseth's hometown of Goodlettsville is in this district. And he would appear to meet the residency requirement to run for the U.S. House of Representatives in Tennessee. There, you have to have been a citizen for the state for 3 years, a resident of the county represented for 1 year immediately preceding the election. Assuming that, Hegseth's voter registration and legal residence is still out there in Tennessee. Obviously, he's spending most of his time in the Pentagon and in the Northern Virginia area. But if he's still, okay, fine, that's probably not going to be an issue. What I find a little head-scratching there, Greg, is that would Hegseth want to stop being U.S. Secretary of Defense in order to be a freshman congressman? That strikes me as a step down. That strikes me. And also, one, Hegseth sounded like being Secretary of Defense was his dream job, and there was so much work to do, and he couldn't wait to get started. And also, remember, he got elected. The Senate was split 50-50, and J.D. Vance had to break the tie. So this was not exactly an easy lift for Republican senators to get him into that position. If he were to announce, hey, it's been a year, okay, everybody, see ya, I'm going to go run for the House of Representatives, I think Republicans would be pissed, and I think they'd have a good reason to be pissed. I think when they confirmed Hegseth for that job, that he'd be there, if not the whole Trump term, then for a good long stretch. So I think this is generally nonsense. Maybe he's had a conversation about this. I can't imagine he's put a lot of thought into this. And if he really were interested in leaving the Secretary of Defense job, which, again, there's not much indication of this, would you want to be a House member or would you want to go back to Fox News? I know one is a heck of a lot more lucrative and a lot fewer headaches. So, again, I think NBC News is barking up, if maybe not even the wrong tree, maybe the wrong orchard.
Yeah, definitely. I think given his passion for the two things that he wanted to do and, rooting out DEI in the military and improving lethality, I feel like those are significant goals that are going to take time. It's not like he can say, we've accomplished these things. So I think he is committed to those things. And as long as he's got the support and confidence of the president, there's no reason to think that he would depart. Because like you said, it was quite an effort to get him across the finish line. And I think not only that he would want to stay, but that he pretty much owes it to the president to stay until further notice. So I think this will probably go away for a lot of reasons, including the reasons you laid out, that there's just not a great political avenue for him right now. Maybe somebody overheard him saying, down the road, maybe when after this administration is over and I've been in Tennessee for a while, maybe something like that. But
at the end of a long, lousy day, right after the Signal chat comes out, hey, can I run for office in Tennessee? How long do I have to live there? That's entirely understandable. But yeah, I think there's still a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, be very surprised if this were to actually happen. So, Jim, have a great day. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Please be sure to subscribe to our 3 Martini Lunch podcast. If you don't already, tell your friends about us as well. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Greg Corombos. Have a terrific Thursday. Join us again on Friday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.